Namaste. Welcome to the eighth episode of Pursuit of Excellence. It is 2022, and we are back with the show that puts the spotlight on some amazing Indian leaders and their success stories here in South Africa. We have with us today Mr. Ashok Thakur, CEO of KLT Automotive and Tubular. Mr. Thakur is an engineering graduate from the National Institute of Technology, Roorkela, and he has a postgraduate diploma in international trade from IIFT New Delhi. He has spent 35 years in international business, a tenure that includes coveted positions in companies like the Birla Group, Mahindra and Mahindra, and Oman's Zawavi Group. His first connect with Africa came when he took the task of business development in the region for Mahindra and Mahindra Automotive segment. Growing from strength to strength and from one success to another, he took over as the CEO of Mahindra South Africa in 2009. And before his retirement in 2021, he was the Vice President, Group Public Affairs for Mahindra Group's engagement with the government at the center as well as states. But you know what they say, you can take the leader out of leadership roles, but you cannot take leadership out of a leader. So, despite having retired, Mr. Thakur itched to do more. And this culminated in him taking up his current position, of course, as the CEO of KLT South Africa. We can go on and on about Mr. Thakur and his various achievements, but it is time to let him do all the talking himself. Welcome, Mr. Thakur. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thanks.
So, are you ready? We are going to have a question and answer session, and we may just put you on a spot.
Most welcome. Please, you can fire.
Super. So, let's start. So, as the executive director and CEO of KLT Automotive, and even before that with Mahindra, of course, you have been living in South Africa for a long time. Could you tell us what made you accept this assignment in SA and how has your experience been thus far?
All right. So my engagement with South Africa has been for a long time. And the first time I visited South Africa was in 1999. But having said that, after a long innings, when I retired, KLT approached me, and the organization, the way it is structured and set up, it's a true example of an investment coming from private sector, from one BRICS country to another BRICS country, and having operated and successfully run the company for 10 years, this organization aspired to grow to another level. And so that gives me enough adrenaline to come and start work again in South Africa. So that attracted me a lot. Also because it's a very interesting company specializing in auto components, and which was able to set up and generate a lot of employment. So that was from the work perspective, but as well as from familiarity with the terrain, familiarity with the environment. I think all that helped, for me to decide on this. On the personal front, both my sons have continued to live here in South Africa, so that also was another, trigger for me to accept this assignment.
Wow, that's nice to know.
It was
How old
win-win.
is
It was win-win. It was win-win in every way.
Ah,
Yeah.
nice. Is your son in university, sir?
Sorry? Yeah.
Is your son in university?
No, both are working. Both my sons are
Perfect.
working.
All right. Fantastic. So when people come to South Africa, at least for the first time, which was quite a while back for you, they almost always come with some sort of like a notion, a preconceived notion, thanks to television, thanks to well-meaning friends and family. What were your particular expectations of SA before you came here? And how do you find SA to be in relation to them?
So as I said, I came to South Africa long ago. That was in 1999. And all the information that I had about South Africa was from the media. And you know how the media writes, how the Western media writes. They continue to write like that, and which is really very unfair about the country. And they continue to still write like that, which is really very unfortunate. But as I came into this country, as in any other country, there are so many differences and you got to align yourself to those differences. And but from a business perspective, what I found was everybody was very receptive. The government was very receptive. The local business entities with whom we wanted to work, the banks, the advisors, everybody was very receptive, and they facilitated the business to come into the country very, very easily. In terms of certain expectations or understanding that we had about our own brand, how it would behave in this country, we had some differences. So we were able to leverage local experts who were able to guide us to get to the right entry strategy. While in India, you would always think whether you would get the right resources here or not, the right expertise here or not, or you would have to ship out other experts into the country. But fortunately, all the expertise was available in the country, and we were able to prepare the right market strategy to come into the country. And absolutely, it was not difficult at all to set up business in this country.
Let us move on to the next question then. Sir, you mentioned your kids working here, you mentioned your family. So I think it's apt that the next question be about your family. You've been living here with your family. Did you love it here? Did they love it here? And how did you find the transition?
See, I have lived in other parts of the world as well. And for me, adaptability was not so difficult. And I was prepared for it. I had done all the pre-read, before I got into the country. But for my family, they had not read all of it, and they did not believe in any of the things that I was telling them. So for them, Pretoria was just like Mumbai, and that they could go anywhere or they could do anything. But I think gradually over a period of time, they understood the dynamics, and thereafter they have sort of got very well entrenched in the ecosystem here, and they enjoy it. So the transition also has been pretty good. You see, one of my worry was whether how would they behave or how would they deal with other students in the school, because they arrived here in South Africa when they were still in school. And believe me, the school was the biggest success, location where they became so popular in the school that almost every student in the school knew who they were, because they were the only two Indians from India. And everybody wanted to know everything about India from them. And at least on 2 summer vacations, a few of them came to India on a holiday and stayed at our house as well. So their transition, and they have become South Africans more than me, I would say.
That's so awesome. I would love to sit with them and hear more stories like this. Because it's very similar to mine. I experienced the same while I came here as well. So amazing. So glad they loved it. Now, moving on to KLT. Your website says that KLT has 4 offices in South Africa. Has expansion in South Africa been easy for you?
Uh, the whole journey of 10 years of KLT has been like a textbook success. This was the first time a chassis manufacturer set up a greenfield project in the country. Prior to that, either the chassis of a vehicle was produced by the auto company themselves, or it was being imported. It was the first time outside the auto manufacturer, a chassis manufacturer was able to come, and it was facilitated by many organizations, the Department of Trade and Industry, Ford Motor Company, etc. And so with that, they were able to set up, and gradually over a period of time, they have been able to scale up that whole business, add more companies. And the journey has, I would say, it has been pretty good and pretty steady. There haven't been any difficulties in finding new businesses or finding new customers, or scaling up, or finding the right manpower. We haven't had any difficulties. We don't have 4 offices. Just to correct you, we have 4 factories. Each one of them is a factory, and they produce different products for the auto industry and the mining industry.
Apologies, I did have a note over there whether I should check whether they're plants or whether they're offices. I guess I just went with it. So Now, coming to your core products, sir, since most of those joining us today are not clued in on what your industry is actually about, what does KLT Automotive and Tubular Products do, and which industries does it serve?
So KLT makes auto components primarily, and we make metal parts. Our major part is the chassis of a bucky. A chassis is like the skeleton of a vehicle, and so you have the wheels underneath and the passenger compartment above it. So it's like the skeleton of the vehicle, and that chassis we manufacture at our flagship plant at Hammanskraal, which is 50 kilometers away from Pretoria. It's a huge plant which was employing about 1,000 people directly, and indirectly about 7 to 10,000 people are dependent on that plant. We have a lot of specialized equipment there, a lot of presses up to 2,600 tons, and over 130 robos, which does the welding of the chassis. You'll be surprised that every chassis has over 200 components, and they are put together into the form of a chassis in an automated welding, robotic welding process. So that's our flagship company, and over a period of 10 years or so, we have built about 800,000 chassis, and these chassis into the Ford's Ranger Bucky has gone all around the world. So that's our first the flagship factory that we have. Then we have a tube mill in Santon where we make tubes, and this is also a vertically backward integration for our operations at Hammanskraal. And the tubes get into auto components as well as the mining industry. The third plant is at Brits, and here we again do metal forming, and we supply auto components to Toyota, Mercedes-Benz, and another tier one auto supplier. And the newest plant that we have is in East London, which is next to the Mercedes-Benz plant in the IDZ. And here we make the B pillars for the Mercedes-Benz cars.
Incredible. Quite clearly you're a pro, right? You're an absolute pro at this, at growing things. So, and how is it working with local South Africans here? Give us a compare and contrast with regards to the workforce here and with regards to the workforce in India.
See, well, workforce generally in most parts of the world are more or less similar, because these days it's a very competitive world, and the workmen have to work with the management, if they want desired results. And so from that perspective, I would say the South African workmen work within the parameters of the local regulations here. And similarly in India, the workmen work within the parameters there. So there's not much of a difference because it's all target oriented. It's all very much business driven. But if I look at the executives, there's a huge difference between here and in India. The work-life balance out here in South Africa is very good, and I love it. And I have adapted myself to it. So I don't have any complaints.
All of us. So, sir, you mentioned that you have a lot of automation in your plant, and you use a lot of robotics. Is that kind of skilled labor also easily available here?
Yes.
Nice. So, sir, you have a proven track record in setting up import and distribution operations in the Africa region as a whole. Could you give us a glimpse on how difficult or easy it is for any other Indian SME to enter the market similarly today?
Well, you see, if you operate in the home market and you want to get into any overseas market, the complications, increase. Even if you want to go from South Africa to Mozambique, it's a totally different market. So every market adds a lot of variety, or I would say complication into the whole thing. into the way you do business. It can be competitors, it could be pricing, it could be even the product expectation, it could be communication, how to communicate with your customers. It could be the whole set of regulations, import duty, currency. So each one of these factors adds a variable into the whole business, and you have to factor them. And if you want to get into any market, you must do a proper feasibility before you make an entry strategy into the market. Because your next door market, you may be very successful in this market, but you could be a failure in your neighboring market. So doing a feasibility study before preparing an entry strategy is very important. And I think one of the most important thing is to understand the customer and the expectations. If you get that right, then you will never be wrong. Another point that I want to say is for any business to be successful in overseas markets. So if a company is generally operating, say, in South Africa, and they want to go overseas to another market, there has to be a lot of management support, because without management support, you really can't make success in any other market, because you will need support in product modification, you will need support in communication, marketing, you will need support in after sales. So the whole management bandwidth support is needed. So you must have management support before you get into any other market.
That entire answer I should make a transcript for that answer, because you have about 5 completely practical points that, it's like a checklist coming from a veteran. So that's amazing. Now, if you could change one thing about how business is done in South Africa, what would it be, and what would you change, and why would you change it?
See, in South Africa, the cost of doing business is something of a concern. At every stage, the cost that gets added up, and eventually what the customer has to pay. I think there's a huge gap, and there's a huge opportunity of improvement, whereby this country can become more competitive. You see, it's cheaper for a country like Kenya to import things all the way from China or Asia or Europe than to import from South Africa. Similarly, even you go to Angola or Mozambique or any of the neighboring countries, they import most of the things from overseas, and they don't import from South Africa, or they import very few things from South Africa. So if we can get our cost of doing business down, then I think South Africa can become very competitive in at least Africa to begin with.
Totally second that, sir. You picked like the perfect point. It could become another session altogether. So, coming back to KLT now, what is the one best thing about being and working in South Africa for a company like KLT Automotive? If we put you on a spot and ask you, I want just one thing, please.
Well, so I'm the boss, so the buck stops here. So the decisions have to be made here on the ground on all aspects of the business. So that's a lot of empowerment, but at the same time, there's a lot of responsibility to take the right decisions. I think that's the beauty of working in another country other than your home country.
Do you watch cricket, sir?
Of course.
That was a sixer on a no ball. I think it is time to move on to some less serious stuff now. We'd like to know more about you and your working style. Are you a workaholic in reality? Or do you take time out to explore the beauty of South Africa by yourself or with your family? Let us know.
Okay, so on that alcoholic, that word is not in my dictionary in the first place. I am a work alcoholic within my time limits. So usually I start my day early and I finish my day on time, and I generally don't work during the weekends, but my phone is on all the time. So if anybody wants to reach me out for anything, you can reach me out, but I'm not generally working during the weekends. That's on the work side. But in terms of going out, I love outdoors, and believe me, I have explored the whole of South Africa, including also Africa, but South Africa virtually I've been to most parts, not once, but a few times.
Nice. So, sir, let me ask you an offbeat question, right? Since you are the only one who has answered the previous question saying you have seen all of South Africa. So, if you were the tourism ambassador for South Africa, pick one destination that you'll want the world to know about. Because right now, the world clearly only knows Cape Town.
Each place or location in South Africa is unique, so unique. It depends on what you want, believe me. But generally, people come to South Africa for either going to Cape Town or looking at the wildlife. But believe me, there are so many places, so many places. You go to the Drakensberg, you go on the garden route. I mean, there's so many places, and each place is so very unique. I mean, you can spend months and months around in the country enjoying nature. So to me, while Cape Town and its surrounds is so easily marketable and a lot of people are coming there, but there are many, many more places. Drakensberg itself is so beautiful. St. Lucia, that side is so beautiful. So there are many, many places.
Yeah, maybe on the thumbnail we'll put St. Lucia, a new destination for people who don't know. So, yeah, this touching upon the previous question only, which is the one place that has left the most memorable impact on you? It could be just the sheer beauty, or it could be the beautiful time you spent with your family, or something, anything. The most memorable one.
I think the garden route is still the best. And, the area around Wilderness, Neisner, Plet, they're beautiful places. And you can go in any number of times and you'll always have a lovely vacation there.
Nice. So, what's next on the bucket list, whether in South Africa or outside? Because you've clearly seen all of Africa almost. So, what's next?
So some of the next ones are to go along with my family because I've done it earlier. To go back to Victoria Falls, Zanzibar, Casablanca, Addis Ababa. So these are some of the places in Africa that I want to do. But of course, in South Africa, I want to go back to Kruger maybe every alternate year. Go back to the Drakensberg region. Again, Garden Route anytime. And I still have to do Namakwa land. So Namakwa land is in my list of things to be done during the next season.
I love it. I'll replicate that list now. So now coming to something different again. Today, as many new entrepreneurs and business owners from India look to expand beyond India's shores and set up shop in South Africa, what would be the one piece of valuable advice that you would give them if they want to set themselves up for success here? And of course, you could also include your outlook in that answer, like your outlook on South Africa in the near future.
So I think one point that I will say, which is usually out of any feasibility studies, or it is there in general, all feasibility studies, but it should get due importance, is to understand the customer's expectations or the business expectations in any new market. If you can get that right, then you will get your market entry strategy right. So getting to understand that is very, very important. And once again, I would like to reiterate that management support is key to getting into any international market.
Yeah, fantastic. Let's end this segment here. We'd really like to thank you for your time and gracious answers, Mr. Thakur. It was such a pleasure to have you with us, and we loved that you gave us time, and we loved that you gave us your answers. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And with this, we wrap up our eighth episode of Pursuit of Excellence. Along with our esteemed guests who take their time to chat with us, I'd like to thank the Consul General of Durban, Honorable Shri Anish Rajan, who made this series possible. And of course, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. We hope that you keep joining us again and again, and we will bring you a new guest soon. Thank you.